Load2Learn, making curriculum materials accessible.
Hello, welcome to this Load2Learn video on understanding file sizes. All computer files have a size, and the size of that file determines what you can do with it. So let's have a look at some of the principles that are important for understanding that. File sizes are measured in bytes, but most files that you will see are at least 1,000 bytes. So 1,000 bytes is a kilobyte. 1,000 kilobytes is a megabyte, and pretty much most of the files that you deal with will be in the range of megabytes. 1,000 megabytes is a gigabyte, and gigabytes are very large files, for instance video files. 1,000 gigabytes is called a terabyte, and most hard drives you buy these days are of the size at least half a terabyte, but very often 1 or 2 terabytes. A terabyte is a lot of data. Different types of files have different size ranges. So for example, videos are different from Microsoft Word documents, they're different from PDF documents, and those are different from audio books or audio music files. In general, a text-only document, that is a document that doesn't have any formatting, will be on the range of 10 to maybe 500 kilobytes. If you have a Word document with a lot of pictures, that can be 1 to 5 megabytes or even more. Photos are generally on the order of half a megabyte to about 15 megabytes, depending on the quality of the picture that you took and the type of camera you're using. Audio files are typically on the order of 3 and more megabytes. So a typical song of a few minutes will be about 3 megabytes, and a typical podcast or an audiobook may be as many as 50 or 60 megabytes, or even more if it goes over an hour. And videos are typically on the order of hundreds of megabytes, and if they are of the size of a movie, they can be up to a gigabyte or even more. Now, depending on the size, there are different things you can do with the file in the way you handle it and share it. So for example, when you send an email, most emails shouldn't probably have attachments much more than 5 megabytes, even though that size is increasing. So 10 megabytes is still safe for many emails, but if you want to be compatible with all your recipients, keep your attachments under 5 megabytes, and that is the total of all the files attached. For things you typically upload online, to be able to do that in a reasonable time, you should probably aim to keep it in the low hundreds of megabytes. A typical USB stick or USB drive will contain anywhere between 2 and 16 gigabytes, even though the sizes are increasing, and you can now get 32 and 64 gigabyte USB sticks as well. A typical hard drive these days will be 1 to 2 terabytes, even though some of the smaller notebooks may only have several hundred megabytes to save money. So what all of this means that in a typical email, you can attach maybe 10 documents or so, and maybe 5 pictures. Again, depending on the size, that could be quite varied. The sorts of things you will want to upload are generally photos, MP3s, or relatively short videos. But if you're dealing with films or thousands of MP3s or pictures, then you can use a USB stick to move those files around. But if you want to store hundreds of films or tens of thousands of documents or many photos and MP3 files, then you can only do that using a hard drive. Of course, you can even upload all of these things, but it could take you days or even months to upload gigabytes of data on the internet. So when you think about file sizes, you should really think in ranges. So between 1 and 5 or maybe 10 megabytes, you're dealing with Word documents, photos, and music files. And that is about the maximum of an email attachment. When you're dealing with very large photos or MP3s that are over 10 minutes, or maybe short videos in low resolution, then you're dealing with the tens to hundreds of megabytes. And over 100 to maybe 2 gigabytes, you're dealing with films, short videos in very high resolution, or that is also the typical size of a USB stick or USB drive, or the size that you can get for free from an online backup service such as Dropbox, SugarSync, or Google Drive. If you're downloading files from Load2Learn, you may notice that some of the Word documents you download are much larger than is typical. So for example, you can have a Word document that is as large as 150 megabytes. That's almost like a small video. And that is done to preserve the quality of the included pictures, because there are many pictures in those files. but we are also offering a smaller version of those files with reduced size, and that means the quality of the pictures is slightly lower, but it should be more than enough for most uses unless you need to print them in high quality. So to summarize, the larger the file, the more storage space you need, the longer it takes to download it, and even longer to upload it online. It also takes longer for the file to open and longer for the file to save, and some slower computers may struggle with handling a very large file. However, it is important to note that if you have more files on your computer, it will not slow down your computer. Files are simply stored on a computer in a passive way. What will slow down your computer is not having enough operating memory or RAM, and that will also make it slower to deal with a large file, but simply having it on a hard drive, assuming you have enough space on the hard drive for the operating system to work properly, will not slow down your computer. It is also important to remember when you're dealing with files online that most internet connections have a much slower upload speed than a download speed. So even though you may download a music file in seconds, it may take you many minutes to upload it. And for a large video file, it could take hours. Sometimes it is important to discover the size of an entire folder. And you can do that if you right-click on the folder and choose Properties. And that will show you both how many files there are in the folder and what is their combined size. Thank you for watching.
Thank you for watching. For more tutorials or information about Load2Learn, please visit load2learn.org.uk or contact us on 0300 303 8313. Copyright 2012 Dyslexia Action in RNIB. Licensed under the Creative Commons license by attribution for non-commercial purposes and shared alike.